B1AG, I want the bag. Work my way from a garden to a track. Flip it from a track to a plot full of acres. Do it for the farmers and the producers and the makers. What we even here for? Occasionally I ask it. I know it's more than struggling, anticipating the casket. Reap what we sow, I'm trying to fill up my basket. Life's a plantation, I self-law and master. Over the plot I've been granted on this planet. Now it's slanted, cause the chosen been supplanted. But if you overstand it, it was spoken. Fractured, but we ain't broken. Even though some would rather play the role of token, we growing. Black through the essence of our presence. We carry the blood of gods, we carry the mind of peasants. Rich black gardens, future look more like Eden. Multiply seeds like the seed banks in Sweden. Rep my planners on plan according to season. B1 code, switching it up is treason. Black power, family what we eat. Either we get fed or we feed. B1AG.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Copyright Act of disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. What's growing on? What is growing on? What is growing on? Welcome back to B1AG, the Daily Bear Podcast. I'm John Henry Harris, and we also have Farmer Brown, the MC. Here at B1AG, we focus on Black agriculture as it pertains to agricultural production, education, marketing, health, food, nutrition, and economics, all for the Black family and for the Black community. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome Black to the garden. We have an interesting story for you today, and it does center around the unemployment, the rise in unemployment amongst the community during this pandemic. And numbers show that Black women are disproportionately becoming unemployed during this pandemic. Now, there's also a trend, according to CBS News, that more young workers are leaving corporate America to turn towards farming, which is a wonderful thing. So here at B1AG today, we're going to look at this trend and this dynamic and really see if there isn't, expose that there is an opportunity there. And the title of our show today is Black Women Unemployment Rising During the Pandemic. Is Farming the Answer? So Farmer Brown, what do you got to say about this, bro?
First, I just like to say peace to the B1 family. Hope everybody's doing well. You know, one of the worst disappointments waking up. So when I was younger, I remember, I was raised in a single mother home. My mom was a school teacher, very, conservative woman. She worked the garden, cooked, the whole nine, English teacher and home ec teacher. And I just remember the frustration when, it was certain work to be done around the house where she felt like she had to have a white person to come and do the work, whether it's fixing something, whether it's till the garden up, whatever. And it was always frustrating. The protector, the natural male protector in me just felt some sort of way that, hey, I need to be able to do this for my mother. That was like my first dragon to conquer, is like these things that my mom feel like she needs to go to somebody else for. I need to be able to do that. And so when I think about the plight that my mom had, very wise woman. I hate throwing this word strong on our Black women, but we have no choice. Very strong Black woman. And so when I think about what she went through raising me and my sister, when I think about what our sisters are dealing with today, I have a beautiful 2-year-old daughter. I have 2 nieces. Actually, I have 3 nieces. And I just think about what kind of world do they have to look forward to, as a man, not to be self-deprecating. It's miserable waking up in the morning realizing, man, our women are really unprotected. And, trying to eliminate excuses because there's something obviously that collectively males need to do. But it's just dealing with what they're dealing with day to day. And so we know Black women are the most educated. This is statistically most educated in what we call North America. But women, our women also have the highest labor force participation. But when it comes to white males, Black women earn 63 cents for every dollar earned by white males. Here at B1AG, we like to be very specific. We tie conversation around agriculture, and we also understand that civilization was built behind agriculture. Every Black ancestor I know came from a Black woman. And so saying that to say, I look forward to deep diving in this conversation and really exploring, is there a relationship between building our community, specifically our Black women, and getting Black to the garden?
You know, I'm definitely a proponent of agriculture and farming, urban farming, gardening, as a way, you know, for just to get, you know, keep that natural connection to the earth. Being able to supply your own food is definitely a plus and one of the main ingredients in staying food secure. And as we know, and as we talk about often on this show, you know, the top two factors that influence food insecurity rates include unemployment and poverty. And the pandemic has been pushing the line when it comes to unemployment and poverty, you know, whether it's through the loss of jobs, the supply chain disruptions, you know, families being that just normal family functions being disrupted because of illness. So we're going to definitely look at this, and I have a video that I'd like to show you, just explaining how more young workers are turning to farming and agriculture as a way of life. You know, it's like a great migration back to the farm.
Americans leaving their jobs in what's being called the Great Resignation. 4 million Americans quit in July. 4 million, that's according to the recent data that we have. At the time, the number of job openings stood at a record-breaking 10.9 million. The pandemic has prompted millions of us to, re-examine our lives. Are you really happy? Some younger workers are leaving their fresh degrees and budding careers for entirely different fields, as Janet Shamlian shows us.
James Marriott leaves for work before sunrise. A drive starting on Boston's crowded streets and ending on a road less traveled. The final stretch of his commute, acres of plush farmland.
So I don't need more bands.
With degrees in neuroscience and global health, the 24-year-old has recently taken a new job in farming.
Right now we are bunching 150 bunches of cilantro.
It's a different skill set, far from the lab of a biotech company where he used to work, developing vaccines.
Have you heard the term quarter life crisis?
I'm very familiar with that term.
Is that what this is?
I wouldn't so much call it a crisis. This was, a very intentional decision, and this is not something where I was like, I don't know what to do. Let me just go work on a farm. This is how I want my life to go.
Here, I got you.
On a crisp fall morning at Drumlin Farm, Marriott is not an anomaly. We also met Sean Moriarty, who left his job as a copywriter to harvest crops. And physical therapist Kat Steckbeck traded days inside a hospital for bucolic green acres.
It's beautiful. Feels really good just to be here.
Almost all these 20-somethings left not just jobs, but in many cases, quit careers as the pandemic took hold.
It was believe it or not, a very stressful time. For me, it was just not the right setting. And I think COVID certainly sped up the feelings of burnout.
Crops manager Matt Salona tells us he's not surprised by the applicants now looking for work on the farm. Years ago, Salona did something similar, swapping academics for agriculture.
Makes sense to me. They've tried a job, they don't like it, they want to try something else, they have an interest in the environment.
What's happening in this Massachusetts farm field is part of a seismic shift. A July study found nearly a third of U.S. workers under 40 considered changing careers during the pandemic.
What is the commonality among these 20-somethings who are leaving these white-collar jobs for farm work?
We all kind of felt like we were cogs in the wheel of this larger system that we didn't really want to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And this was kind of our way of taking agency back over our lives and just being like, this is what we want to be doing rather than doing something that we felt we had to be doing.
In other words, a lifestyle change. This group is environmentally minded and wanted to work outdoors. But there's a trade-off. Beyond calloused hands and sore backs, the job comes with a pay cut.
Your income has dropped by half?
A little more than that. Yep. It's been a life adjustment. I mean, it's certainly reevaluating what I choose to spend my money on.
Whether the move is permanent, Steckbeck's not sure, but says the pandemic helped her recognize the fragility of life and spending time doing what makes her happy.
I kind of thought that it might just be a break, and maybe it is, and maybe it's not. It feels like a shake of the snow globe, I guess. So it's a little flurries everywhere right now, but good things, I think.
Sean Moriarty can see a future in farming, saying the work is meaningful.
You know, I did not feel like what I was doing mattered at all. And that's why you're like, okay, I got to leave this.
And James Marriott, pursuing a master's in epidemiology, says it's the right choice for right now.
I don't see myself doing this forever, but I'll always kind of keep farming with me in some way.
The pandemic's impact, for some rethinking what's important and venturing into new pastures. For CBS Mornings, Janet Shamlian, Lincoln, Massachusetts.
Oh, thank you, Janet Shamlian. You know what? Nick Offerman would approve.
History has a strange way of repeating itself. I just think that's so cute. They're out there in the field. But if we understand once again that it was our ancestors that built the $1 trillion industry that we understand today as agriculture. And I just want to do I'm a lightweight historian in my spare time, but I want to read a story from the Great Depression. And I think the melanated family can read between the lines of what's going on now and how history is repeating itself. And what we can do is we have this conversation of really reasserting ourselves within this field. So this article, Black and Poor African Americans in the Great Depression, the Great Build Back Better Reset, however you want to frame it. Most African Americans did not participate in the land boom and stock market speculation that preceded the crash, but that did not stop the effects of the Great Depression from hitting them particularly hard. Subject to continuing racial discrimination, Blacks nationwide fared even worse than their hard-hit white counterparts. As the prices for cotton and other agricultural products plummeted, farm owners paid workers less or simply laid them off. Landlords evicted sharecroppers, and even those who owned their land outright had to abandon it when there was no way to earn any income. In cities, African Americans fared no better. Unemployment was rampant, and many whites felt that any available jobs belonged to them first. In some northern cities, whites would conspire to have African American workers fired to allow white workers to access their jobs. Even jobs traditionally held by Black workers, such as household servants or janitors, were now going to whites. By 1932, approximately one half of all Black Americans were unemployed. Racial violence also began to rise. In the South, lynchings became more common again, with 28 documented lynchings in 1933 compared to 8 in 1932. If we think about everything that's gone on over the course of this pandemic, however you want to frame it, history is repeating itself. There are a lot of stories. We see these stories about, all of these jobs available. We just need more workers. But then on the back end, you're hearing a lot of stories about a lot of people losing jobs and not getting hired. When we understand that our sisters represent 68%, and that actually, Black women have a higher participation rate in the labor force than every other group of women in North America. And so what's happening is a lot of times we get caught up in these numbers and we're not identifying who are the people affected by these numbers. So saying that to say, when times get hard, this is when they conveniently sweep the melanated people out of the way. Our contention here at B1AG is one of the answers. There's many answers, but one of the key ones is reasserting ourselves back into this food system. Back in the 30s, agriculture was very simple, outside of tractors, silos. It wasn't very technologically advanced. We didn't have social media. At that time, Black women weren't the most educated group in the country. And so saying that to say there are a lot of opportunities that, from my professional perspective, that I see that our Black women can really take advantage of. Obviously, as Black male, there's a whole bunch of bags waiting for us to come and take up. But when we think about really having this holistic approach, this holistic communal melanated approach towards now, how do we not only survive but thrive in these changes we see going on? it's almost a no-brainer getting Black to the Garden family.
And at the end of the day, when we have our melanated women, more participation by them in the agricultural field, that will increase the yield. There's more food produced. Because in these times of uncertainty, if you don't have a job, you still have to live. And one of the main reasons and one of the main ingredients to living is eating. So you may not have that money to go buy some Jordans, but you can still eat like Jordan if you're growing your own food. And this is an infographic that basically just breaks down in North America how much more they say with the influence of in North America more women to enter the agricultural field, that we can increase the yield from 2.5 at least from 2.5 to 4%. And that additional yield could reduce the number of undernourished people in the world by 100 to 150 million, or 12 to 17%. Now here at B1AG, we stress getting Black to the garden, and this is because of food security. Now, being able to nourish 100 to 150 million more people, that sounds pretty secure to me.
I was listening to the sister Lisa Cabrera, and she had an article just talking about how the economists they're in a tizzy right now, like, oh my God, the women, during this great resignation, the women are leaving, and if the women don't come back to work, our economy's stuck. We think about childcare issues. A lot of people are sitting really reevaluating: is the time I'm putting into this place, this office, this building, this brick and mortar place worth what I stand to gain from it? A lot of these mandates are kicking in. And you think about the healthcare workers, the educators, a lot of these offices, on top of just, hey, is this what I really want to do with my life? So saying that to say, it's literally, and I don't have the statistic in front of me, if women don't go back into the workforce, and when they're having a conversation, they're not, B1, they're just talking about women in general. But we understand our women are more represented within the workforce than every other group. They're not going to say that piece of it. And so it's our contention here, like, hey, sisters, let us lock arms and go Black to this garden. Women by nature, and this isn't trying to put gender bias or, these little buzzwords. Women are nurturers, right? From breast milk to, just what is the most manageable way to run this household? What is the most manageable way to make sure everybody eats, everybody gets their fair share, and we get to the next day and we have the healthiest organisms running around this household community? When you get that with the skull, in my little weird mind, I feel like men are the skull of the Black community. The skull protects that brain that's constantly figuring out all these ways. We know our women are some of the most resilient human beings on this planet because they've had to be. And so as a skull, as melanated men, so what is our place within this structure? Since we see that, okay, there's obviously a value in this agricultural space, and there's also a lack of melanated women within this agricultural space. We also see we're coming into a time where, okay, we know food security is affecting our communities worse than every other group of people. We also, here up in Kentucky right now, man, it's turning into a mini drill city. I hate to say it that way, but, a lot of people there's a lot of violence going on, and we know there's strategic, not strategic, that ain't the word I want to use. Yeah, there are strategic reasons why this violence is going on. If I starve you out and I keep you contained within these dysfunctional communities where y'all are going in on each other, you're going to justify me bringing more law enforcement in there to lock more of you up. The more of you I lock up is typically going to be males, which is going to put more of this burden on your women in your communities. Like I said, when I think about my mother, when I think about my nieces, when I think about my daughters, I'm like, man, what males are going to be available to fulfill whatever roles male would need to play to have a thriving community. And so saying that to say, we have to really get into some tangible group activities. This being producing our food, finding niches within this food system. Family, I can tell you, I think Joe, the guy in the White House said it the other day, things aren't going to get back to normal. This is as good as it's going to get. This came out of his mouth. Now, not that I trust much that comes out of these people's mouth, but there's a magic in truth. And so when we talk about this magic, I think about the black magic of our sisters and applying that to this thing we call agriculture. First, you want to, so the sister asked a good question. There's some acres for sale in her hometown in central Mississippi. I'm from Macomb, Mississippi. My grandmother is, she recently passed Osaka, Mississippi. Is there a secret strategy to acquire that land? So first, you want to look at, is this land arable? There is a difference between, okay, I just got some land that got, some brush hills. That's not going to yield you much money. You want to look at now, does this land have rich soil? Does this land have water sources, within a reasonable distance to wherever you will be growing your crops or raising your livestock? I can tell you that depending on where you're at in Mississippi, once you get closer to the cities, your urban areas like your Jackson, your Hattiesburgs, the land is going to become a little bit more expensive. In your more rural areas, it will be cheaper. I know here in Kentucky, for example, like rural land is going to hit you about $2,500, $3,500. Once you get closer to like Lexington, Louisville, it might hit you about $9,000, $10,000 per acre. But saying that to say, even the rural land is good, but you want to factor in, now, how am I going to make this land profitable to me? I don't know where you're located, sister, but look at, okay, if I have this land, maybe I don't want to get to 2,500 acres. Maybe I just want to get 25 and really make this 25 profitable. What am I going to be growing here? Who is my market? Well, if I'm growing herbs, if I'm growing vegetables, if I'm raising some livestock, some chickens, whatever, do I have a market that's going to buy what I'm growing here? This is a piece that, this is one of the questions I get consistently within my job at Extension is, how do I make this land profitable? So you really want to think these things out. And I know once our sisters, and there's some good sisters to follow, I didn't have a chance to put that infographic up today, but we'll definitely put that on the next presentation. Once our sisters get their mindset on what this is and how it works, I guarantee you can outcompete anybody on this country. But the main thing you want to think about is, for what I'm about to get in this land, what can I yield from it? If it has bad soil, that means I'm going to have to spend a lot of money, a lot of resources to replenish the soil. If it doesn't have water, that means I'm going to have to have some sort of extensive irrigation system, or I'm not going to be able to grow anything. You don't want nothing with a lot of hills unless you're going to be raising goats or some sort of agritourism. Forestry, so I think it will be worth it to look at. And as I'm answering the sister, I'm kind of speaking about what we're talking about today. It will be worth looking at what kind of trees or timber is on this land, because timber is very valuable. We have this conversation about, okay, these people don't want us to eat at the table. Let's build our own. What do you build tables with? Timber. And so that's a huge industry. Also, you want to think about, like I said, who is your market? Who's going to actually buy what you're selling? You don't want to put anything in the ground. You don't want to invest a dime in any sort of land, especially if you don't already have family land. You don't want to invest a dime until you know where you're going to make your money from. How do you go about doing this? And so same way, scientific research, do polls wherever you live at, and see, we're fortunate now we have an internet. And so we can get pretty concise numbers on, hey, sis, hey, bro, I'm thinking about getting some land. I'm thinking about growing some tomatoes. I'm thinking about raising a couple chickens. Would you be interested in? And you want to get I appreciate it. You want to look at, okay, if I'm raising these tomatoes, how many tomatoes would you buy per 4 months? What is your weekly or monthly purchase of chickens? And you want to ask this question to at least 1,000 to 5,000 people around you. You're never going to get 100% participation in a survey, but I'm a believer in the law of thirds. You're at least going to get a third of whatever you reach out to. And so from that, you're able to decide, do I need to go for 250 acres or just 25 acres? And like I said, really itemize what it is you're going to sell. You don't want to experiment especially right now during this time. You want to be very concise. If I'm in an area where people eat carrots and collard greens, let me not say, oh, I just want to grow radishes and spinach. If this is not what the people are eating, you're going to, it's like pouring water in a filter. And so you really want to be very specific about what you're getting the land for. But like I said, some shout out to the elder Susan Miller up here in Kentucky. I guarantee you on about 4 acres, she can outdo most white farmers I know easily. They have a very codified system. I ain't gonna get into her numbers, but she's doing football numbers when it comes to running a successful operation. Her daughters are able to go through school just off of what they're producing on the farm. I will also say, sisters, if you do still have a career, if we're fortunate to be in family units, care units, as Nilly Fuller would say, you want to have somebody that still has a consistent, stream of income as you're building your operation. I'm a believer in the Most High, and I'm a believer that, faith is not a thing that, you can't really apply your faith until you go into the unknown. But then there are some, we're given a spirit of discernment and to studying and show ourselves approved. So studying is understanding, coming in as a melanated person in agriculture, there are going to be some things that is just not going to be as easy for you. But you can mitigate that by making sure you still have a consistent stream of revenue coming in and be able to invest in your operation. Getting land right now is a great investment. So I'm not in any way saying don't get land. I'm saying be very specific in the land you're looking for. There are a lot of people out here, and I'll just be honest, that'll sell wolf tickets. I know if this sister come in and she don't know no better, I'm going to sell her this dry land where the soil's depleted. I can't do nothing else with it. This soil's contaminated. Nothing's going to grow from it. But I see this person is excited about getting land, and I'll give it to you. I know this land is crappy, and I'll make it like I'm giving you a deal. And so there's a whole lot of that going on, and it isn't just exploiting women. It exploits people who haven't thought out the essence of what it is they're doing. But saying that to say, one of the main reasons we have this B1AG conversation is to contextualize the conversations you at home, the viewer, as you go into this journey of getting black to the garden, what are these little details to think about? Because the devil's operating the details. Absolutely. It's happened to my man. One of the things that got me really honed in on this agricultural conversation. So our family had about 40 acres down in Louisiana, Clinton, Louisiana. And one of my uncles, this is back when my mother was younger, sold that land for a Cadillac because he didn't understand the value of it. And there was very valuable timber on that land. And so once again, because a lot of us have kind of been socialized not to see the value in land ownership, not just owning the land, but making that land productive, goes back to what I'm saying, history repeating itself. People in the Great Depression understood, regardless of what's going on, man, these black janitors, these housekeepers who we just kind of take them for granted. Wow, they're the essential workers. They're the ones that keep all of this going. So we're just going to conspire to make sure we move them out the way. Food security operates the same way. No matter what's going on economically, you have to have food. And so once again, we're not coming from a place of struggle. We don't operate in a struggle mindset. We're coming from a place of how do we get ahead of this? This video that CBS showed, you notice you didn't see no melanated people in there. There's a lot of melanated people doing this. So there was a very specific reason Gail King, I Freudian slip. I just hope the family sees the huge opportunity, and more specific, I hope the sisters understand this grand opportunity to get black to the garden and the huge advantage you will have if you make that conscientious choice.
And one of those huge advantages that you'll have is that there are a lot of monies available to you to get black to the garden. Here's the URL for loans and grants that are available. If you have to just come back and look, rewatch, pause, and that is the URL to the Farm Service Agency of USDA programs and services, farm loans programs, minority and women farmers and ranchers. And I really want to let you look at it so you can actually see what this page looks like. and there is actually a lot of funding that is available to you for women, African Americans, Alaska Natives, American Indians, Hispanic, Asian, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. This is for Black men as well. There's a lot of money available to you as the Farm Service Agency targets a portion of all guaranteed loan funds, direct operating and direct farm ownership loan funds, microloan funding, and youth loans to historically underserved farmers and ranchers. And again, this list includes women, African Americans, Alaskan Natives, American Indians, Hispanic, Asian, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders.
I would like to add a caveat to that this is a thing and this is an option. We don't, as a melanated community, we don't want to put ourselves in any situation where we don't have options. Loans are cool. You know, if you know that you have a consistent market, you know, you're comfortable enough with your operation where you know that you can afford to take on a loan, but there's nothing like funding your own operation. That's another part of this B1AG conversation. If you have a large enough community buy-in, community being your online community or your family direct community, if you have a large enough buy-in, then you then have a large enough market to make sure you're not going in debt just in case the weather's bad. Just in case you've gotten this land and you don't realize like, oh, this was horrible land. And so you would much rather come out of pocket. I imagine the average black farmer I know would much rather pay for it and not have to deal with loans. For the sisters, there are grants too. There are a lot of grants. What I can tell you, a lot of these white women, what the white men will do, because they understand this dynamic, they'll put the farm operation in the woman's name, because they know the women can access a lot more of these resources because of these minority grants, minority loans. Once again, when we think about codified approaches within the B1 community, this is a good play. You know, I hate to be disparaging of any group, but there are a lot of bloodlines dying out right now, family, across the country. What this dying out equates to is there's going to be a lot of land going up for sale that your Gateses and people like that aren't buying up. And so there is an opportunity, because nobody's going to give no land away. Nobody's going to give land away. That's one of the few tangible assets that are going to consistently appreciate. And so if we can get in this codified mindset of investing in land, this makes me think back to Moneybag Yo and his girlfriend buying him 28.8 acres. Like, if we can amplify that concept of the way we gift one another, I'm going to give you something that's going to keep giving, whether this is the brother giving it, as an anniversary gift to his wife or vice versa. And when we get into this mindset, we then are able to address this job situation. We see that our sisters are getting fired. And it doesn't matter how good you are at the job. It doesn't matter how loyal, how effective you've been within this position. History is repeating itself. Hey, I'm going to get rid of this group so I can protect this group. And so, as a conscientious community, what are we doing to make sure we're not worse affected? Because this equivalent of the Great Depression hadn't hit yet. When we think about the shortages, supply chain disruptions, we see everything's coming together like, hey, there's going to be a huge change in life. There's going to be a huge change in the way the world operates. And so how do we make sure we stay in front of it? And how do we make sure we're the Rockefellers, we're the Rothschilds, we're the Carnegies, we're the Vanderbilts that capitalized on this great depression that happened in the 30s? How do we make sure we're creating the new elite black melanated families in what we call North America after this so-called Build Back Better or Great Reset, however you want to frame it? And you can't go wrong getting black to the garden, family.
So we're showing you there's a trend of the others, young workers, getting to the garden, to the farm, they're actually leaving high-paying jobs to get back to the farm. We're showing you, giving you the numbers that our black women and just black people in general are leading the unemployment during this pandemic. We're the ones getting fired first. So again, we're bringing you options, solutions that, hey, let's turn towards what has built the world, what has built civilization, farming. Because regardless of their work system, their employment system, we still have to eat. We have to make sure that we have some food. So let's make sure that we are the ones that are feeding ourselves. Let's not wait for them to give us a place at this proverbial table to eat. Again, we spoke on it earlier. Let's build our own table. Let's pull out our own chair. Let's sit down and let's partake in this plate of food that we grew ourselves.
This just came to my mind, putting things in perspective. And so with this stat of Black women being the most educated group in America, what that means is this group, this demographic is most predispositioned to take in knowledge and apply it, since we see the large representation in the workforce. And I'm thinking, okay, how can, because people ask, how can I support Black farmers? Well, I know a lot of people have high student debt, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of $1,000s in student debt. I can imagine for 1/20th of what we would give one of these white institutions to teach us, if you could give 1/20th of that to a Black farm somewhere near you. Same way these white kids are going to these farms, doing these internships, make it rain on some of these Black farmers to teach you. And I imagine they will be glad to teach you as you're learning hands-on how to run these operations. What I learned in my own personal path, there's a lot to be learned in books, but there's nothing like being in the ground. There's nothing like sweating. There's nothing like out here trying to build a fence. There's nothing like, okay, I got to feed these cows like every day or something's, there's nothing like hands-on activity. And so when we think of what are ways to support these farmers, outside of buying the products that they're growing, is shopping with them as teachers. These are some of the best teachers. I come from a family where, you have people that never passed 3rd grade, but ran whole farm operations. You know what I'm saying? Successfully. I don't think any of my aunts or uncles ever went without anything. They weren't rich, but everybody was able to thrive because the layer that I came from were producers. All of them had niches within this thing called agriculture. And it wasn't a thing where we had to promote it. It was just lifestyle, because they're in the deep South. It wasn't nothing else for them to do. But saying that to say, you can help these farmers by paying them to teach you how to farm. Like I said, there's a Black farmer, though it's not that many of them left. There's one within 50 to 100 miles of wherever you're at. Maybe this is a call to some of the sisters that are in education looking to transition to another career of really working the logistics. Now, how do we make these some courses? There are grants, going back to this concept that there's a lot of bags for distant learning, NTI, non-traditional instruction. And so there's a lot of bags available within this agricultural space, even outside of the production. And once again, I know if our sisters put their mindset towards, okay, this is something valuable, this is something that I can see useful to me, I know to that degree, you're going to start seeing, think Queen Sugar, right? Getting the Queen Sugar mindset. But let's amplify this to this 2040 plan of making sure that we're global competitors and whatever these people got in mind.
They keep throwing problems at us. Here at B1AG, we're going to keep coming up with solutions for our community, for you, for me. Let's get Black to the garden. Let's get back to that natural way of living, that healthy way of living, and let's not forsake all that the Most High has given us in this land that we walk on. It's been a great conversation, Brown. Again, a lot of issues, but there's always solutions to any issues that are presented. And each of these issues that are thrown at us, again, is an opportunity because life doesn't happen to us, life happens for us. So, Farmer Brown, if the people really want to know something, bro, what do they need to do?
Family really wants to know something. I see a bright future when we learn how to grow something.
We'd like to thank you again for tuning in to B1AG Daily Bread Podcast. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Let's grow this conversation. Let's make sure that our entire nation is conscious and aware of feeding ourselves, being food secure, and making sure that our intake is something healthy and it's going to help us thrive into the next generation. So until next time, I'm John Henry Harris. We have Farmer Brown the MC, and we're out. Peace.